DeVries.
Sorry, doing a mic switcheroo. Thank you for saying my name correctly. That doesn't happen every day. Do people have paper? All right. I'm gonna riff while we hand some paper out. This is not a trash can. It may look like a trash can, but it's not. Today, right now, this is a vessel which houses the American dream. And so, what's the American dream? How do we define the American dream? It's the white picket fence, it's the 2.5 kids, it's the dog, it's the vacations, it's the car that you want, it's the income that allows you to dream of a future and save for it. It's the American dream. That sound familiar to you? Yep. Okay. So, if you've been given a piece of paper, I want to ask you to do one thing for me. I want you to perceive that paper as a symbol of your future, your destiny, and I want you to crumple it up and I want you to throw it at the American dream to see how close you can get. But there's one rule, just one, and that is that you cannot move. You can't stand up, you can't step forward, you can only crumple and throw. Go. Woo, woo, look at that. Ooh, okay. All right. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. All right. All right. Look at that. We got about 5 or 6 right in there. Round of applause for the people that made it to the American dream. Not bad. You got it in. How come you got it in so easily?
I got that curve.
Got that curve. What else?
I'm close.
You're close, right? I mean, what's your name? Latron. Latron, look, he had a great arch, but he also had great proximity. Let's be honest, Latron. All right, who else? Who got it in real easy? Who got it in real? I saw a couple of them. Real easy, right? Right up front. Are you basketball players? No? Are you just lucky? Yeah? How about the back? Who got it in from the back? How would you know? Right, how would you know? Right? Well, guess what? I see 2, 3, 4, 5 right here in the middle. How come you didn't make it? How come you didn't make it back there? Couldn't see it. Too far away. I heard you. Now, who didn't throw anything? Why didn't you throw anything?
I didn't have any paper.
Didn't have any paper. Well, whose fault is that? Why don't you have any paper? Is that my fault? Is that your fault? Now listen, if we're not all starting in the same place, and we're all rooted where we are, how can we expect to get the same outcome? Thank you for being here to talk about Bootstraps. Let's talk about what it really takes to get ahead. Now, I don't know if you know this. This is one of my favorite things in the world. The incredible notion that people should just simply reach down and pull themselves up by their bootstraps and propel themselves into success. Why is this my favorite thing in the world? Because I'm being ironic. I run a United Way. And when you run a United Way, you are someone who encounters every day people who have a will and a desire to do better. And you also encounter people every day who have notions of why those people exist. So let's talk about the origin of the idea that people should be able to simply do better for themselves, because it's hilarious. Meet Dictor. That's this guy. Dictor became possible and became rather popular in October of 1941. He is the main character, the protagonist in a story about this dude that travels to the future 30,000 years and takes over the world. And he's a dictator. And he did this by the fanciful creation of a time travel machine that involved a lot of science and some boots. Okay? It was called by his bootstraps. Time travel. Did I mention it's science fiction? It became a metaphor for the impossible, right? It became something that you would say when you're trying to describe something that's silly and doesn't make sense. Like, how are you gonna do that? That's like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, right? It became a metaphor for something pretty silly. So, yeah, that's what it meant. But, over time, the bootstraps narrative evolved, and it started to mean something different. It started to mean self-reliance. It started to mean you can do it on your own. You don't need anybody's help. You can make it. You don't need intervention. You don't need forethought. You don't need anything but yourself and your grit and your bootstraps. But why was it not perceived that way initially? Because it represented the impossible. And it still is impossible. It's fiction. So today, we are, as a nation, strapped with two very distinct narratives, right? These are the two distinct narratives that define poverty in America today. These are the things that you end up talking about with your friends. These are the conversations you end up having with people on the other side of the political aisle you're on. These are the posts on Facebook that make you angry, regardless of which narrative you adhere to. You got the don't feed the bears narrative. If you have ever watched an episode of Yogi Bear, or if you've ever gone camping, you've seen this sign up, right? Don't feed the bears. Well, why not?
They'll come back.
That's right. Because they'll keep coming back, won't they? Because you're gonna make them lazy, aren't you? You're gonna teach them a completely different set of behaviors than what is normal and core to them. You are going to they're going to become reliant on you. And then when you apply that to the human condition, to society, what are we saying? We're saying, your problem is not my problem. You should be able to figure this out on your own. And frankly, the most compassionate thing we can ever do is make someone fend for themselves, right? Because it's teaching them self-reliance. Does that sound familiar? Does it sound like the bootstraps narrative? Am I missing something? Don't feed the bears. But then there's the born bootless camp. And this is, we're passionate, right? You got equal passion on this side of the argument. This is the group that's saying, well, wait a minute. People are born into poverty, like an inheritance. And society is structured to advance those who have and to keep those who have not in a specific position in life. And let's not forget that race and socioeconomics are correlated, and that race will keep you down because discrimination is real and alive in America today. Sound familiar? Right? Would it surprise you if I told you that neither narrative is getting it on the head? Would it surprise you to hear that neither one has it right and that neither one has it wrong? Because both are missing something extremely important, the most important thing. Both narratives, both platforms, both discussions are leaving out humanity. Leaving out the general and basic fact that all people, core to all of us, a universal truth, is a desire to be valued for the assets and individuality that we bring to any situation, certainly our own lives. So you're the guy in the middle. Okay, you're the guy in the middle. You're the family in the middle. And you're coming home from a 12-hour work shift, and you turn on the news, maybe you're getting ready for your next job for the day, and what you hear about yourself is that you're lazy, that you're useless, that you're a taker, and that you're a freeloader. And then you say to yourself, well, my gosh, if this is laziness, I have no idea who defined that word. But then you turn to the left, and what are you hearing about yourself? You're hearing that you're helpless, that you're incapable, that you're oppressed, and that you should be demoralized. Imagine what that feels like. Because no one at any point is thinking about what you as an individual actually want, need, desire, and are bringing to your own equation. Because this is what we all want. We all want to be treated in a way that allows us to have pride. We all want to have independence. We all want to be treated with respect so that we can afford respect to others. And we all want dignity and to have expectations for ourselves and our children. And we want our children to have expectations for their own futures. Is this not true? Is this not the reality of the human condition? Well, when you know this, and when you buy into this logic, it changes the model for the service that we provide to people who want better in their lives. It changes the way you perceive them, and it changes the way they perceive themselves. Because it's no longer about what can I do to serve you, and it's no longer about you're not my problem. It's instead you're valuable, how can I help you achieve your dreams? But let's talk about the reality for a minute, shall we? Because what gets lost in both narratives is what it's actually like to be in that position in the middle. 13% of our community is managing on a salary between $11,000 and $29,000 a year. That's 13%. Now, these are either extreme poverty or close to poverty level wages. What's important about this number, besides the obvious fact that it's not easy to get by under those conditions, is that 87% of the people who are living in this situation under these circumstances are working full-time. Full-time. Now that challenges the concept of the handout, right? That challenges the idea that people are simply looking to game the system. In our community, 87% of the people who are poor are working. Now, if you really look at the $29,000 number that you're seeing in that middle, that family of four, here's what's important about that number. It is above the magic threshold of poverty. And that number, $24,000 a year, our government determined in its lovely infinite wisdom back in the 70s when people still smoked stuff and it was no problem for anyone to do that. They got together and they decided that poverty would be formulated against a $24,000 a year number, and it hasn't changed much since then. Now, the thing about that number is if you make $24,000 a year, you have access to a number of different subsidies. You can get help and support from the government, those handouts we like to talk about. But if you're making $29,000 a year, you're out of luck. But here's the thing, to live in the Roanoke Valley today, in order to manage your basic needs and get to work and take care of your kids, you've got to be making enough money to provide $17,000 plus for food and transportation. You've got to be able to afford more than $8,000 in housing. You've got to be able to send both of your kids to preschool or after school care so that you can still work. That's about $9,000 a year. And then, if you're really lucky, you can have some health care between $6,000 and $7,000 a year. And if you're good at math, or if you saw me click the number earlier, here you go. That adds up to more than $40,000 a year. This means that people who are struggling to get by and do not have access to subsidies today are constantly in a hole. And to overlay the whole conversation, most of these individuals are working an hourly wage job. Have you ever thought about the difference between being a salaried employee and being an hourly wage earner? If you're a salary employee and you go to work and you find out that a pipe busted in the building and you all need to go home, you're like, awesome, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna catch up on my DVR recordings, right? But if you're an hourly wage earner and you get sent home, you're talking about near catastrophic situation. You're talking about having to try to figure out what it is you're gonna give up the next day or the next week in order to get by. One time I was sitting at my desk, and by the way, that's if you're lucky, right? That's, am I gonna give up my food or my medicine? That's if you're lucky. One time I was sitting at my desk, and I got a phone call, and it was a nurse who was weeping on the phone. And she called me to tell me that earlier that day, a little girl who had had a heart transplant was going to be released to go home. And that should have been good news. But she couldn't do it. They couldn't let her go because her mom couldn't afford the anti-rejection drugs. And her mom, single mom, worked full-time, took care of her 4 kids, worked a fast food job, did have health coverage, was shocked one day when her little girl was sick, took her to the doctor and found out her daughter had a life-threatening heart condition. And through an extraordinarily fast series of events, here she was now in a situation where her baby got a heart transplant. And that one small thing she needed, those anti-rejection drugs, were just beyond her reach. Now yes, we helped. But imagine that happening in your life. And how impossible that seems, doesn't it? But it's not impossible because people in this position are only a moment away from being on the brink of crisis. So when we understand that, we have to think about the underpin to this notion, right? Sometimes people will see that information and those numbers and they'll say, okay, well that's fine, but still, people in that position made the choices that they made, and they got there because of the decisions that they made in life, right? Okay, but let's talk about kids. Let's talk about the fact that there are 11,000 children in our community that are in poverty today. And let's talk about what is known as the locus of control and how important this is to all of us. The locus of control is a decision that we make, all of us as human beings, as to what it is that controls our destiny in our lives. Is it ourselves? Are we in control of our own decisions? That's an internal locus of control. Or is it the influencers outside of us? Our circumstances, our environment, is that what controls our lives and our destiny? And we've all decided what our locus of control is by the time we're 8 years old. So, while the parents, while the adults in a neighborhood may have made their lives what it is, those children are still racing a clock to make decisions about their own destiny, and we have an obligation to influence that decision making. And they come to those conclusions based on who believes in them and what their environment is telling them. So, is it our problem? It is. Because we're either going to raise a generation of kids who believe they're in control or we're not. Now, I hope that I have not depressed you by telling you everything that's wrong with the world. Because I'm now going to tell you what we might want to do about it. There is another way of looking at support. And when you look at support from the perspective of first understanding what someone or a family or a neighborhood or a community is bringing to a table, it changes your formula for intervention. Let's start by talking about social services today. Today, if you need help and you go to get that help, you need an immediate and emergency intervention to keep a roof over your head. You're gonna go and you're gonna get a little bit of money to pay your bills, right? But guess what? Next month you may still be in need, and no one's asking you what else you need to when you go to get that help. So we really need to think about this in terms of what do we need to equip people with so that we're not just giving them enough to stay in their lane, but we're giving them enough to change lanes and head in a different direction. And an integrated social change system helps to do that, because it's not just about taking care of your immediate need and putting a Band-Aid on it. It's about making sure that what is done to support you and your family is done with thought and through a series of supports that moves you forward. And if you focus on early education, financial stability, and health, you are integrating a system of supports that gets people more stable and helps to address problems at the root. But if you also do that with an end in mind, and look at sitting down with people and talking to them about what their ideas are for their own creative solutions, for their own challenges. And you figure out how to create a collective strategy around those ideas through family, through neighbors, through community. And then you think about, how can we invest in you as a person? How can we take your idea to the next level and make something of it, and then give you something to sustain? And then you watch what that kind of confidence does for a family and a neighborhood. You begin to see real substantive evolution around the mindset of poverty. Now, I know this sounds like pie in the sky, right? This sounds like something that's just like a dream, almost as crazy as Dictor and his Bootstraps story, but it's not. I'll give you one of many, many examples. I met a woman through a program that United Way is a part of who came to us. She raised her children, and then she found herself raising her grandchildren. And she needed a place to send her little grandbabies during the summer so that they didn't fall behind or fall into bad hands. And in conversation with her, we got her children lined up with an out-of-school time program, and we talked to her about financial stability programs that she could enroll in. She met a financial coach. She learned about an IDA program, a matching savings program, and we learned that she not only loved children, she had a passion for senior citizens and would love nothing more than to open an assisted living facility. It was her dream. We helped her save her money and matched her money so that she could achieve that dream. We gave her nothing. We helped her achieve her dream. And in 3 years' time, she opened an assisted living facility that not only provides for the resources for herself and her family, gives her a position of financial stability, it also aligns her to her own assets and helps her achieve her own dreams. This is not impossible. It's just another way of looking at a solution. So, as I approach the end of my talk, there are two things we have to recognize if we're going to make this concept an important priority for our communities. And it is the idea that pre-traumatic stress is a real thing. It is the idea that children have every opportunity to do better for themselves if we help them make the right decisions about self-belief. Because the absence of self-belief is a poison that numbs you to your own potential. And we have every responsibility to do something about that. And second, the American dream is and has always been about community. It has never been about individualism. It never has been. And what this means is, this isn't about taking care of oneself. It never has been. From Henry Ford and the construct of the Model T, that wasn't just Henry alone. He surrounded himself with experts and talent and made that dream happen. And to the many stories of immigrants that came to the United States and pooled their resources and talents to do better for themselves, it's always been about interdependency, and it still is today. We have to stop picking sides between the two narratives. We have to invest like a venture capitalist, except invest in people. And we have to recognize that 25% of a community cannot be lazy. It's an unreasonable suggestion. What they are instead is in a position to do better for themselves with the right interventions and the right measures of support. And if we're smart about it, we can make the kinds of differences that change society by believing in people. Respect more and expect more. This is where the answer lies. Thank you.